we don't rise to the level of our visions, we fall to the level of our systems. Mm-hmm. And so I just love that. I love thinking that I'm a bit of a systems guy. And so wanted to know if you would talk a little bit more about that, specifically when you're talking about systems, what you're thinking about when you say that. And then how do you kind of make your way into that as you start thinking about organizationally getting from one level to the next, bringing a team along with you, all the things that go into that, building strong systems and where are good places to start?
Well, the statement itself, it's the idea of, hey, someone's got a great vision and they got a great dream of what they want to do, what they want to accomplish, but the system isn't going to support it. There's just no way, the system's just not going to be able to make it happen. Mm-hmm. And so you got to step back and just say, okay, if I have a big vision, which I know you do, you've got big heart, big vision, you want to do a lot of great things for the Lord. You're looking at other campuses and God's doing awesome things and all that. But the systems, that's where it'll all fall to. So if you throw a ball in the air, per se, and let's remove gravity for a moment, you throw a ball in the air, you say, we want to go this high. And we want to go this high. And I'm like, well, that's great, but you're definitely going to fall down to the system. So the systems, I think, that you have to look at or the questions you have to ask are, how do we reach more people in our church? How do we get more people involved in ministry? How do we get more people serving in ministry? How do we grow leaders? How do we create pipelines? Like those are the pipelines of leadership. How do we do all that? Those are the things that have got to be systematized because the intuition is very difficult to teach and very difficult to duplicate. Mm-hmm. You are a relational leader, and you and I talked a couple weeks ago, you have an intuition about leaders or about how to do something. The problem with intuition is you can't duplicate it. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult, if not impossible. Who knows? I guess you could argue either side, but either way, guaranteed very difficult to duplicate intuition. So what are the systems by which we do these things? Mm-hmm. And to classify those, like when you and I talked with your staff a couple weeks ago, we looked at like, okay, so how do we get more people engaged in the life of the church? Mm-hmm. How do we get more people growing in leadership in this church? Like, what are we actually doing to make that happen? Most of the time, what I've noticed is we leave a lot of that to chance.
Right.
Like, how do you raise up leaders? Well, we see someone that's faithful and then we think that maybe they're a good person and then we talk to them and then then they become a leader. Like, well, that's okay, but that's not duplicatable. That's not even a system. Okay. And, any great growing organization, I got a friend of mine that he's a bivocational pastor and he works for Google and his number one job is just constantly hiring new people. And he talked to me about that we do this, then we do this, then we do this. I'm like, man, they're very, very careful on how they do that. It's not just left to chance.
Right.
So I think you got to be thinking about those kind of things. Like we can't leave all of this to chance. Mm-hmm. We have to figure out systems by which we make this happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. I like how you talked about starting with questions. So whether it's vision or values, having questions that we ask about how we're accomplishing those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think you have to ask the questions in those areas and figure out, okay, how do we do this? How do we do it? It's kind of like the McDonald's thing, the little example I always use, like, you take a 19-year-old kid and he can run a McDonald's. Why? Because he's brilliant or because they have such amazing systems. So figuring out those systems that are duplicatable that anybody can do.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, such an important part of it. So, yeah.
Good.
What else you got, man?
Something we're going to keep talking about.